My name's Kev Jones. Just to tell you a little bit more about myself, I've got 13 years experience in the access control, security, people management industries. My background in this area really highlighted the impact of user experience, actually, because it's often something that's overlooked in those industries. And at ProxyClick, I love working on the touch points between people and systems, building a product that helps remove friction and really delivers something that's meaningful in the physical world. Over to you, Em.
Hi, my name is Emily Thrasher, and my background is actually in commercial real estate. I worked at related companies on their Hudson Yards project for years, and my concentration then was operational efficiency, implementing strategic technology partners, and all while focusing on the best user experience for everyone. At ProxyClick, I get to do that again, and I work with CRE teams on their approach to providing the best people experience within their facility. So let's start by picturing the people that come into your building. You or your teams probably spend a lot of your day managing all the different types of people who come onto your site. This could be your delivery drivers coming in off 33rd Avenue into your loading dock, delivering paper or large equipment to your tenant floors. Maybe they're separate tenant floors going to 6, 8, 10, 52. It could be visitors actually coming in to see a specific tenant who can only go on Mondays and Thursdays now to, of course, accommodate safety regulations. This could be your engineers doing hot or cold work in a new building or an existing floor. It could be your building janitorial staff who need access to specific floors at specific times, or perhaps your tenant has their own janitorial staff and they only should have access to that floor. There's a lot of different scenarios and a lot of different people involved here. Here's our personas on the left carrying out their day-to-day activities within a building prior to 2020. Fairly standard, fairly normal. So what's different? And let's talk about what's different in 2020. Funnily enough, Zoom prices are up, of course. Face masks are now in style. You've now got a legitimate reason why your hands constantly smell of alcohol. And now I know that working from home with a 2-year-old is nearly impossible.
Yeah, and working with you, putting these slides together, I can vouch for that too. I think, change that's really noticeable to me is everybody's now really good at queuing, feels very British. I mean, we all experience these things. And as much as we dislike this new normal, both the saying, I think, and the experience that comes with it, it is true that 2020 really departs from the way things were before. Things aren't normal for us anymore. If we look a little deeper at this slide, though, there's a deeper change there, something that goes beyond hand sanitization or social distancing, marking tape on the floor, or standing the appropriate distance away from each other. There's a deeper change there.
So there's a change behind the scenes, and it's really to do with systems and how they're processed. On the left, where we have our different personas, they tend to be handled very differently. Delivery drivers are handled in the loading dock, which may or may not even put data into a system. Visitors are handled at the lobby level on a clipboard. Employees are handled by the facility management system. And access control might actually be a manual process after that for any one of these personas. All of these different systems take different skill sets, different training, and really provides a siloed approach for the people coming in and also the people managing the systems.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with the way things were before 2020, we had this sort of flexible setup in the systems that people were processed into, but those systems are really siloed. The knowledge of how to operate those systems and the information that's contained within them often stays where it is, isn't shared. And I guess in the way that prior to 2020, the worst thing that could happen from that would be that there's efficiency problems. And that is a problem. Time is money. We all know that. But 2020's kind of put a different slant on that, in that there's various reasons why having these silos are not preferable. If we don't have an accurate picture or a way of kind of unifying our interactions with these people, how do you know things like your building capacity or your occupancy? How do you know if this person's allowed to come in at that time? I think while these processes, they kind of feel like they've been forced upon us because of the pandemic, and we need this technology to help us kind of rise to the challenge of working with what this new normal is. The problems that we're actually solving with this technology aren't new. They're not from the pandemic. They existed before, and they really are efficiency and operational challenges. And so really the problems themselves aren't new, but it's the way that they're manifested that are new at the moment.
Absolutely. So let's go back to personas and talk about that scenario with the delivery driver. And these real life scenarios are very important to make sure that you are creating efficiencies within your buildings. Yeah. So this delivery driver probably arrived 4 hours before they were supposed to. They have boxes for not only one of the tenants that they were expecting, but also maybe a separate building that sits on your campus. And it's probably a new driver and doesn't know your processes as a whole. On top of that, your visitor, who's only supposed to be coming in on Monday and Thursday, came in on a Tuesday, but his access credential doesn't work. So he's standing in the lobby wondering what to do.
Yeah. I think, again, the worst thing that kind of happened before would be it's wasted time. Anytime somebody's standing in the lobby and not being served, it's either a bad experience or somebody's not able to do a service or do a job that you've asked them to do. In this case, you want to give your tenants and your staff the tools to be prepared to handle these everyday events and this type of people flow. In the way that we used to do it, with person A going into system A and person B going into system B, the worst thing that could happen would be inefficiencies. People have to wait. Waiting's never good. But right now it creates fragmentation. And in this time of COVID, fragmentation is undesirable. We need to know, so we can process people coming into the building, it's helpful and necessary for us to know how many people are already in that building. So if you don't have that superior experience, a consistent platform that allows for people to be processed in a streamlined way, then you're not only losing experience there, you're not only losing on efficiency, but maybe you're over capacity, maybe you're not. And right now it's really important to be able to tell.
You're absolutely right, Kev. We have to be able to tell capacity levels. And let's go back to another scenario. We talked about engineers coming in for hot and cold work. They're going to multiple tenant floors and access rooms, but unfortunately, sometimes we don't even know who they are or when they're going to arrive. They're just coming in at some point that day. So they haven't been given to access floors because they have to wait until they come in and check in with someone. And same with your janitorial staff. Currently, they may come in every evening, but it's probably never the same people. You give up all the tenant access for janitorial staff that you do not control or manage. They actually share a building credential between multiple people so that you never know who is actually in the building.
You're right, Em. That's a really interesting problem because people sharing cards, they do that because the systems that are there to give them access aren't easy to use. And the processes are complicated. And I guess that also has an effect. If it's complicated for the person that's wanting to get access, then that's probably also reflected in the experience that the teams have that administer that system. Do you really want your teams fighting with systems, or do you want them managing your key assets, which it's the building and the tenants? So by looking at this as an experience issue, then you're going to get greater engagement, and that greater engagement allows you to be more compliant. Because if you have a system that people can use, and they do use because it's simple and it's easy to administer, so it's easy to give access out, then you can introduce well, you can have better knowledge through knowing the actual people that are entering your building, and you can choose to engage with them appropriately. So maybe asking them some questions on health and safety. You can make sure that they maybe agree with your location policies, and then you start to become compliant. So from this kind of simple seed of badge sharing, we kind of uncover a whole system of inefficiencies in a process that actually leads to that.
Exactly. And I think by talking about each of the problems as a whole, and then coming together and figuring out the most efficient process to be put in place, it makes for a unifying experience. And a piece that you touched on was giving them the ability to get this information prior to even coming to your building. This is very important today, as some states have government regulations around international travel or even domestic travel timeframes. Have you been in contact with someone who has COVID? We've all been asked that question very recently, but where does our answer live? If it's being asked the moment we arrive to a building, or even when we've already stepped inside, the damage has been done if you've answered positively, and it hasn't really been captured anywhere except for the person that's asking the question. So being able to ask someone that's coming to your building 24 hours in advance or even a few hours before that meeting is extremely valuable. It then captures as a knowledge base and allows you to proactively manage the situation on all sides. If you need to ask someone to reschedule their meeting or send a different janitorial staff member, you have time to do so. And time is critical and of the essence, of course, today.
Yeah, absolutely, Emily. I think that's kind of key to the slide that we're looking at here, right? Is that there's this shared commonality that all of these different types of people have when we're asking them to visit our premises. And some things that used to apply just to one demographic of person, maybe you apply certain rules to a visitor only, and an employee maybe doesn't have those rules applied to them. Well, now we have the situation where we have to apply these things at a more consistent level. And in the pandemic, especially, these things aren't discriminatory. The virus doesn't care if you're an employer or a visitor. So we need to approach these processes with that same degree of openness in a way, and make sure that we can process all of these people in a similar way. And I think that's a really important part of people flow, actually, Emily. This unified people flow, these experiences are about looking at everything that we have in common, regardless of our demographic person, whether we're a visitor, a contractor, or even an employee, and looking at how the processes that we need to apply, the things that are the same between these people, that might be questionnaires on your health, or maybe the fact that you need to have your temperature taken, you need to wear a mask. All of these things are the same. Things like access as well, as you mentioned, being able to apply these things conditionally based on maybe the answer to a questionnaire that you give. These things they're not for a specific type of person. So it's not only just applying to a visitor now. Really, employees are somewhat like visitors in their own buildings. So everybody needs to go through these types of process. And I think for employees, that's a demographic that we haven't really spoken about so far, but one that really applies quite well to these people flow processes.
So you're absolutely right, Kev. We've talked a lot about the non-employee side, but employees are now becoming an essential part of, they're wanting to come back to the office, and we have to treat them in a similar fashion as visitors, which some employees don't like, but they still have to be treated in a certain way. So everyone's kind of coming together and realizing that this unified flow, even though it might be a different experience, still has a lot of similarities. And this is actually magnifying the old issues of siloed approaches across technology.
Absolutely. Because, sorry to jump in there, but because if you have these silos, and if you have one population of people existing within one system, you don't have that overview. Things like looking at your building occupancy have less value if you don't have an overall picture of the building. And employees, you want a system that can take into account that you've got, say, 20 employees in on one day, you're allowed another 5 people in, regardless of the type of person. So having a sort of the ability to deal with these new everyday scenarios on demand is part of the new challenge of the modern building. And I think from speaking as well, like we've had lots of conversations with a lot of companies in the sector. And again, though, this isn't just about solving the COVID problem, right? This goes deeper as well, because we know in these large high-rise buildings, we know as a tenant that the processes for an employee in order to even get access to your building in the best of times is complicated. It's reaching out to the facilities team or the front desk downstairs. It's speaking with the security team to get a badge provided. It's waiting. It's picking it up in person, and
There's not a lack of self-management.
Exactly.
There's a bottleneck in the process.
There's a bottleneck in the process, and we can actually start to leverage the changes that we're making at the moment to deliver the operational efficiencies in that regard. By nobody wants to touch things at the moment. There's the touchless is the trend, and for very good reason. With touchless becomes the ability to maybe handle your employment access provisioning at a distance. And if you work with, say, digital access credentials that are based on people flow processes, then you can really start to turn this friction in the lobby into something that's actually a very smooth process from start to finish, and one that actually increases tenant satisfaction and increases the satisfaction of their employees.
Absolutely. And tenant satisfaction, as we all know, is kind of a key asset. You want your tenants to be happy, you want them to stay in the building, and you want to be able to provide a good user experience for them, or the best experience for them, whether it is just getting their new employees into a system, or it's for getting them through the front lobby in a very seamless way. So, we've been thinking about things differently because 2020 is different, right? And I think that unifying all the flows from your consultants to your engineers, to your employees, to your visitors, or your loading dock drivers, there needs to be a cohesive experience. So, let's talk a little bit about the emergency situation, though, because emergency is different. And it's different in 2020 than it was in 2019. And it's literally changed through the years.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an emergency, I think, is something that's evolved a little bit at the moment, as you say. Traditionally, we would describe an emergency as something that happened at your location, and it's something that needs to be dealt with right away, right? That's like, hey, it's an emergency, deal with me now, it's urgent. And I think this was traditionally something you see here on the left, like of this slide, we prepared for by understanding that an emergency was something that would happen now, and we would deploy staff, we would deploy systems to deal with these things as they happened. 2020 has really shown us that emergencies are something that could actually happen 2 weeks ago without you knowing that the emergency is happening at the time. And therefore, our old preparation and our old ways of dealing with these emergencies don't cut it anymore. We need to prepare for these emergencies through knowledge. We need to make sure that by collecting the right amounts of information, not all information, but the right amounts of information about the people that enter into our buildings in a consistent way that applies to all demographics. Perhaps storing the results of maybe any health checks or questions that we ask them, so that we can be sure we can check things. It's about unifying that knowledge and that data with the ability to then reach out for those people in the event of an emergency. So if something happens, we find out that somebody was sick and they arrived into our building, we need to be able to let other people know. We need to be able to be compliant. We need to keep people safe.
And making sure the appropriate data is available at the right time for the right people is key. COVID has truly thrust preparedness into the spotlight, and the technology that we're implementing will be beneficial. I mean, I think it's going to be far into the future. I don't think anything we're doing now is going to be like shut off on December 31st of 2020. Replace COVID with the flu or a pandemic number 2.
Hopefully not.
Exactly. Replace COVID with anything that can be a disruptor in your facility. And I think you'll find that what you're doing now to prepare is valid for those cases. Seeing people on your CCTV screen is very useful, but being able to contact them in case of an emergency, whether they're on site at that current time or after the fact, is really critical for maintaining preparedness. You've probably heard of the 3 Ps, right? Prepare, prevent, protect. And that really applies now more than ever. And now an emergency is really a matter of knowledge.
Yep.
So we go into what we've learned. And we've learned a lot in 2020. We've learned a lot from our clients. We've learned a lot from just people in the industry that we've talked to. And a key value we continue to hear is having an experience that reflects the type of business you are. So trying to provide an experience that suits that vision and key value is critical for your business. It's critical for your building and your people. We've had conversations with all types of people in all types of industries in all types of buildings, and they were stumped on how to get their people back to the office while providing a good experience. And also, understanding that each local government has regulations and mandates. The rules were changing every hour. Confusion was everywhere, and no one had an answer. There was no consistency, and the goalposts kept moving. So, we saw an influx of webinars. We talked about the Zoom stock soaring, and I think everyone is really just doing the best that they can. So we really just want to go into, a couple key pieces of what we've learned and how to implement a good people flow.
Yeah, absolutely. So, some of our learnings on this process. So, the first thing I would recommend is, COVID has been a reason that we're looking at these processes and the way that we process and manage people coming into our buildings. But really that need was there before, and doing something once is more efficient than doing it multiple times. Time savings are the same as equate to cost savings. So COVID has really become a leveler there. We need to look at these processes and really see where we can treat the different types of people coming into our buildings the same, where we can treat them the same so we can keep them safe. Implementing a strong people flow approach, though, is not just about forcing everybody to be processed in exactly the same way. We really need to understand the differences between the people that come into our buildings, so that at the correct point we can slightly change the process for that demographic, or place them into a different system. So we have this balance of similarities and differences in the way that we can process the people entering our building. I mean, in terms of mobile, as you say, Emily, it creates the opportunity to increase your safety processes while increasing efficiency. We can use the power of mobile to offload processes that we traditionally did within our buildings. We can put that into the hands of the user to do at home. That's efficient all of the time. And right now, it's also all about safety. Touchless aspect of this as well, by if we can implement mobile credentials, then that allows us to provide smoother onboarding experiences and give the user an experience they're looking for in 2020. Yeah, I think for the next point, really, it's about letting the platform do the work. If your team can have knowledge on one system, and that system can pass through into the other systems as needed, can pass data through, then you're saving training time and you're creating more operational efficiency and allowing teams to work together and have the data that they need at their fingertips rather than having these silos of systems. COVID is the catalyst, but it's not the reason behind this move towards people flow. Really is thinking about what comes next, what tomorrow is going to bring. And yeah, the tools that we use to deliver a health questionnaire to an employee today can be used as the hospitality tool of tomorrow. The social distancing capacity that we have today, the systems that manage that, become the flexible office space tools of tomorrow. So by implementing people flow, it's really about the advantage to the building and the business that comes in the future, not just about solving these COVID concerns right now. So with these guidelines on implementing people flow, I'd like to say thank you for your time today. It's been a real pleasure to speak with you and share our thoughts on the way that your building is moving, the way that the industry is going.
Yes, thanks, Kev. We really enjoyed putting this together for you. And if anyone has any feedback or additional questions, we love to have conversations and learn more about the industry. That's how we've come up with this, and that's how we're moving forward in the future. So thanks, everyone.